Welcome. I know the PlayStation 2 is infamous for the amount of licensed games on it, but there are some absolutely brilliant gems, as I'm trying to prove to you now, with part 3 of my list of some of the best licensed games on the PS2. Links to the first and second part will be on the end screen, and as you can see, we're kicking off with TMNT, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now, there's been a few games for the titular heroes on the PlayStation 2. I've picked here 2007's TMNT, the video game. As with the majority of the Turtles games, this is a beat-em-up, this time in glorious 3D. It was actually made by Ubisoft, and I believe that they took some inspiration from the Prince of Persia series, which they were also making at the time, and you've got a lot more acrobatics in this than you've had in some of the previous entries. It's not the only TMNT game on the PS2, and they're all good fun. I chose this one just because I really like it. It's one I remember playing fondly, and it's also one of the cheaper ones to pick up as well. But let's be honest, with Raphael, Michelangelo, Leonardo and Donatello, you can't go wrong. Ideal for any fan of the Turtles or beat-em-up genre. And from the heroes in a half shell to King of the Monsters himself, Godzilla, in Godzilla Save the Earth. This 2004 game is a middle child of a trilogy of games on the PS2, all worth playing. I just remember this one the fondest, and it sees Godzilla, well, having to save the Earth. Clues in the title, I suppose. We have an army of monsters to take on, as some very bad humans have managed to get hold of Godzilla's DNA. What did they do? Leave well enough alone? Of course not. They made their own monsters that they could control. Fortunately, none of them are a match for the king himself, Godzilla, and you play the game taking out each one. It delivers a good amount of challenge, and the gameplay, although described as a bit more sluggish than the first game, I think it plays more true to Godzilla's nature, where he is huge and strong, so he hasn't got cat-like reflexes, but everything he does touch he can destroy, and it allows for more use of the beam attacks. The plot is a bit silly at times, if I'm perfectly honest with you. It's a very loose premise, but you get to be the giant Godzilla in the cities, taking down enormous foes, some of which you will recognise if you're a fan of the franchise from other media, and it's just a good time to be had. Highly recommended, not a deep game, but very good fun. And now we move on from movie monsters to a fan favourite television series with 24, The Game. Now, I'm a fan of anything James Bond-like. If it's a spy, espionage style TV show, movie or game, I'm interested. The series, big fan of, and the game, for me at least, did not disappoint. Also, side note, there's a very nice steelbook you can get this game in, and if you can pick it up, it looks great on the shelf. But back to the game. The plot itself is straight out of the TV series, and I was going to go into detail, but I've changed my mind because I don't want to spoil it for you, because the joy of this game is mostly in the story that you get to play. So just trust me, it's really good. On the gameplay side of things, it's a third-person shooter, but you've also got some driving elements, and you've got some puzzle solving as well. The hours of the game, if you like, are actually broken up into 58 separate missions, so you're certainly getting bang for your buck here. Get enough points, 90 or above, which is scored on things like accuracy, then at the end of each mission you get a little bonus, whether it be a little clip or an image or something, which is just a nice little touch. The majority of the missions are done as a third-person cover shooter. It plays as well as any third-person cover shooter from this era, nothing that particularly stands out, but nothing to complain about either, which I think is good enough. They've got a formula, they worked it well. As with any licensed game, it should deliver more of the franchise, the IP, that you like. And that's exactly what this does. I think it's set between the second and third season. It's another fantastic story, plenty of action to enjoy. It's made for the fans, and if you liked this series in any way, you'll enjoy this game, promise you. Back to movies now, as we look at Blade 2. Now, there was a Blade game made about the first film released on the original PlayStation. This is obviously about the sequel. Unfortunately, the third film did get a game, but it was only released on mobile. So back to Blade 2 on the PS2. It was also out on the original Xbox as well. rather than directly adapting the film, this is actually a sequel to Blade 2 and is set to take place after the events of Blade 2 but before the events of Blade Trinity. The setting is 6 months after the second film and follows Blade and Whistler as they attempt to prevent the vampires from creating a race of super vampires even more powerful than the Reapers that were dealt with in the second film. Review-wise, this game went down about as well as a fart in an elevator. It was panned, mainly because they implemented what they called a brand new way of fighting for a beat-em-up, where you control Blade's movements with the left analog stick and use the right analog stick to point it in the direction of which way you want him to attack, whilst having not much control over the way he does attack. It's different, I can see why it didn't catch on. I just like the Blade franchise, so probably have rose-coloured glasses on. Only get this if you can get it cheap. How could I do a licensed game list series for the PS2 generation without mentioning The Simpsons Hit and Run? That said, I don't know if I can add a lot more to it than has already been said in a little elevator pitch. I did make a full video about it, which is about 6 or 7 minutes. You can check that out if you wish. There'll be a link on the end card. Needless to say, it's regarded as one of the greatest, if not the greatest, licensed games of all time. I wouldn't say it's the greatest ever, but I'd definitely say it's got to be up there. It's great fun going around Springfield as Bart, Homer, Lisa, etc. and just having a blast. Why they've not remastered it, I'm assuming it's to do with different licenses, but they need to put their heads together because it'd be just a cash cow. I know I'd buy it, I'm pretty sure the majority of people would, and I really would like to see that happen. Until then, at least we've got the original, and it's still as much fun as the day it came out. Peter Jackson's King Kong, the official game of the movie. What a catchy title that is, eh? It's based, of course, on the 2005 King Kong film, and is starring, among other people, Jack Black. That's before he just made kids' films, and does indeed have the majority of the cast from the film reprising their roles both in likenesses and with the voice acting. This film in itself is actually very good, but has been largely forgotten about with the more recent King Kong films which cross over with the Godzilla ones, which are also very good, but that doesn't mean that this one isn't. Little tip with this one, the heads-up display is turned off by default. I think it makes it more immersive, but if you like a HUD, then you can turn it on in the settings. You get to play as either the human, Jack, in a first-person perspective, where you get to use all sorts of guns and spears, and, more importantly, and much more fun, you get to be Kong as a third person, so you can appreciate his size and brute strength. At the time, this game was actually praised by the critics, and as much as I don't always side with them, I've got to say they were 100% right. This is fantastic fun. It's as good as any game, licensed or not, done really well, and if you like this sort of thing, you're going to have an absolute blast. It's a cheap game to get, and a must-have in a PS2 collection. Terminator 3 Redemption. The game is partially based on the film Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines, but does expand quite significantly on the film's backstory, so there's extra content here for fans of the franchise rather than just a rehash of the film. And you get to play as a T-850 Terminator. Because, let's be honest, why wouldn't you want to play as a Terminator? It's quite linear and can be quite difficult at times, but is great fun. I've always had a bit of a soft spot for the Terminator films. I grew up watching Terminator and playing Resident Evil, so I'm pretty sure I know which way the world's going to end. One of those two. But I digress. You play some levels on foot, where you can fight against other Terminators. You get various guns and things. You can also do the hand-to-hand combat, where you pick up road signs and stuff like that to bash them over the head. There's driving levels, which I always personally think are a highlight in most games. You can do things such as drive a hearse, pick up trucks, and a police car. And there's also some on-rail shooter elements as well, where you're in a moving vehicle and you shoot the oncoming Terminator enemies and their vehicles. Plot-wise, don't want to spoil it for you, but it does follow the general theme of a lot of these films, where you're a Terminator, where you've been captured by the Resistance and reprogrammed to go back and protect John Connor. So you go back from 2032 to 2003 to protect him from the oncoming Terminators and battle Skynet. It's a little bit deeper than that, although not a lot. It follows the franchise perfectly. I enjoyed this thoroughly. Let me know if you've played it and if you liked it. And now a recent pickup for me, Futurama, the game, which goes for between £15 and £20 here in the UK, but I do believe is a lot more expensive in other areas. It's written by the show writers, it's got the proper voice cast, and the cutscenes in between the episodes are presented as an entire lost episode of the series. I think it was actually present on one of the DVD sets, but I digress. A great fan service. As I said previously, a licensed game should just be more of what you like, and this is certainly that. You get to play as Fry, Bender, Leela and Zoidberg as you jump, punch, shoot and fight your way through each level against the evil Mob Corporation, and it is just as wacky as the series. Great fun for anybody who's a fan of this, and another comedy game. We don't have enough of those. And that concludes part 3. Let me know if you like the look of any of these, what your favourites are, or if I've missed off your favourite. I'm always looking for new games to play and to talk about. If I've done things correctly, you should be looking at links now for parts 1 and 2. Feel free to click on and have a look-see if it tickles your fancy. Also, while you're clicking, don't forget to like and subscribe. Helps us tiny channels out a ton. And until next time, I'll see you soon. Ta-da for now.